Sean, welcome back for part two. This is where you get to ask me questions. So fabulous to have you again, and fire away.
Well, thank you very much for having me on again. Really appreciate it. So my first question to you is, in your 35 years of professional coaching experience, what would you say are the three main differences between good players and great players?
That's a great question. Firstly, I'd say focus. I think that from a young age, the great players have a great ability to block out distractions. Some of them are very, very smart. They actually, very young, learn how to distract opponents whilst not losing focus for themselves. But I think they have this ability to block out distractions, especially when they're playing matches. And part of that distraction, I think, is in their own mind, is every player has a fight with themselves. That's just normal. But from a younger age, they start to understand that beating themselves up totally is not that helpful, although some will operate from, a kind of a, I hate to lose standpoint, and some love to win. But they're very, very competitive, and they can, in their minds, focus on things, not all the time, but better than others, that help them get the best performance out of themselves. And as they get older and more sophisticated and at higher and higher levels, they're very good at blocking out distractions off the court as well, and have an innate feeling of, what is too much partying, what is too much anything, and just do understand what it is that they need to do to be very, very good. But having said that, there are players that have not had an amazing off-court lifestyle in any form. But again, they're very good at separating in their mind, and once they're on the court competing, they have this laser-like focus to block out distractions then. And that would, I'd say, be the first thing. The second thing is, I think they have an innate belief that they're going to be successful, and they're not afraid of that. I think a lot of players, want to be successful, they want to do well, but at the same time, they fear, better players, they fear bigger tournaments, they fear a lot of things, and ultimately, their belief in themselves, they think, is some kind of magic, whereas the great players understand the process, which I talk about quite a lot, which is you just need to become a better tennis player. A lot of mental toughness comes from just being competent, better at what you do. If you're a better tennis player, you're going to beat more people without having to be mentally that unbelievable. Of course, at every level, so when you get to the very highest level of the game, they're incredibly competent in everything that they do. Then it becomes very, very mental. But in order to get there, and the steps and the process to get there, I think the great players understand the process, and they, again, are not distracted by, wins and losses and anything other than the fact that they need to get better. And when they lose, they might get very angry, they might, cry and scream and all of that. But internally, they know that they need to become a better tennis player so that that doesn't happen again. So again, when they practice, the focus that they bring is so much about how to improve, because I think they realize that that is the holy grail, that you have to be tennis-wise good enough. And the mindset they have that is a big strength is that ability to work and focus on learning how to be a better tennis player. I hope that, I don't know if that answers your question, but
that answers a lot of my questions actually. That's very very interesting to hear you talk about the success being almost like a bit of a fear for people in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I learned this, quite a long way into my coaching career, that when players are, and I use the term loosely, failing, in other words, they're not progressing as fast as they would like, and feel like they're failing, a lot of the time they're comfortable with that because they're doing it all the time. When you step out and start beating better players and winning bigger tournaments and having to break new territory all the time, that can be and is, I think, mostly scarier for people. And that is something that holds them back, because whilst they want to go into the new territory, they also like the safety of where they're at. So I see it at different levels. You have players that do really well at futures, then they step up to challengers and it's very uncomfortable for them. And rather than sticking it out until they get comfortable in challengers, they have a few bad experiences in challengers and they dive back into futures where they can be very successful. And then same thing from challenger to tour. They need to stay up in the tour as long as possible to try and get comfortable at that slightly higher level. But when the ranking starts to slip a bit and everything like that, it's quite easy to think, oh, I'll just go back there for a while until I'm really ready. But the reality is, the only way to get ready for the level above is to operate at the level above. And operating at a level below is some preparation, but it's not, it's never going to prepare you for what actually has to be done at a higher level. And I mean, just last analogy I'd say is, I think it's like, people who have kids, nobody really understands what it's like to have a kid until they have a kid. You can get explained it all the time and stuff, but it's just, and once it happens, the only way to learn how to bring up a kid is to have a kid.
Yeah.
There's no real rehearsal for it. And the only way to get up the levels in tennis is to go there and try to stay there. I mean, obviously the ranking drops so much, you have to go to a lower thing. But every chance you get, you want to try to play at a higher level if you can.
That's very interesting. Just going back to the point you made about the players being more comfortable, like almost not moving to the next level, being very comfortable where they are. Would you say that that's because they know moving to the next level requires more from them in terms of hard work, focus, dedication, free time, that kind of thing? Or would you say it's simply when they get there that they are afraid to fall back down? What would you say is like the main factor there?
I think it's very much down to the individual.
Okay.
I think, I have had players that I feel have experienced something really, really good, and possibly in their minds have interpreted it as like, that's the pinnacle. I made it to there and I'm kind of happy with that, because I know, because the formula doesn't change. Every step you take forward means more work, more focus, a tighter lifestyle, simplified lifestyle. All of these things, are part of it. And there's sacrifice there, and I personally think it's probably worth it, but there's a kind of a level of sacrifice that different people are prepared to go to in order to succeed. And if you hit that ceiling, then they're not going to progress further, because it's scary to go outside of that level of sacrifice. The other point you made, which is, I think some will experience it and almost think, oh my goodness, if that's what it takes, I'm not sure I want that. Yeah, I think there's different things that happen to people as they climb the ladder, and I'd say this, that most players don't know it until they arrive there. And the thing about sport, which is very different, is no player can go, you know what, I'm very comfortable where I'm at. I'm just gonna do what I do, and I'm not interested in being higher ranked, because sport doesn't operate like that. Whereas a businessman says, you know what, I've made a lot of money, my business goes pretty well, I'm not looking to expand it, I want a better work-life balance, and people applaud that. But in sport, that never gets applause. So players, I think people in the know and are really around it know where players are, but nobody is coming out publicly and saying, I'm good where I'm at.
No.
Which is just part of the culture of sport. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know. But yes, I think that's probably the main two reasons. The other reason is I think some players are willing to sacrifice everything and are willing to put in the focus and everything, and they do that, and maybe they're just not quite good enough. And after a while, they're almost forced to settle because they just can't move to the next level because the game is just not good enough, or maybe the mind is not good enough. They just don't have, what it takes. Because the highest level of the game is, pretty special.
Just bringing it back to a bit of a basic level as well is injury. Some players might not be strong enough, and because it's
the body's just not robust enough.
The tour's demanding.
Very demanding. Yeah.
Playing at 30 25 weeks of the year.
The very best probably play about 30 weeks. They play probably about 18 to 20 tournaments, but of course the slams and some of the 1000s are pretty much 2 weeks. So they play about 30 32 weeks a year. But on the way up, players are playing, probably 35, 36 weeks a year.
It's a lot.
They probably play about 28, 30 tournaments, but, if they do play slams, or they do depends where they are in the ranking, but some will just play like 32, 34 tournaments a year just to try and climb.
It's a lot on the body.
That's a lot on the body.
And all the travelling as well, that's another thing that people don't think of as much. But
I'd hate to think about the number of air miles in total I've done in my career, or the number of hotel beds I've slept in. It's just wow. But it's been a good journey.
Yeah, some of the places aren't too bad, are they? Like
no,
Bahrain, very nice.
Yeah.
So my second question to you is, how has the game changed over the last 10 years, and how do you think it's going to evolve over the next 10 years?
Good questions. Over the past 10 years, I think the evolution has been power more than anything. Power and the ability to hit spin and angles, because of the string development and racket development has really helped. And training has become more and more sophisticated. And because of that, athletes are stronger, faster than they've ever been. Of course, it's putting a huge strain on their bodies to do this level of training and then have to be putting out on court. Well, that's a separate issue. So I would say yes, the average speed of shots, and I'm sure they'll have stats to back this up, is definitely steadily going up. And the ability for players to reach balls and hit with quality out of defensive situations is on another level now. Yeah, so as far as the next 10 years, I think tennis is going to be much more all court. I think players are going to have to be good at pretty much everything, and especially having the ability to finish at net, and be able to break things up with the drop shot as well. I also think that serves will become increasingly accurate, because players are always going to look where's the easiest way to find points for the least effort, and serve is always a big part of that. The Achilles heel for almost every player is the second serve, and I'm not sure what players can do about that, because you've got to slow it down to get it in the court. But I do think players will start to experiment hitting bigger and bigger second serves. I think the biggest thing will be players are going to have to learn how to be much more all court and be comfortable, cutting in and volleying, or and coming forward. But again, they've got to really use their athletic ability then, because if a player's in defense and gets a feel that someone's coming forward, they can kind of still, suddenly, hit a good passing shot. It's the surprise element that is going to be very important. I think you're going to see increasing amounts of serve and volley. You'll never be able to be an out and out serve and volley. I think guys return too well for that. But the surprise element, both with the first or second serve, I think has to be part of the repertoire. So I think that's where I can see it going. I guess, like anything, athletes will still get faster and stronger and better, and the equipment will probably still improve, and speeds might get even higher. I've seen so many different generations, and you always think, wow, how can it ever get any better than this? But then it does. And I think that's with all sport and the beauty of it. You wonder if there is a kind of like a ceiling. But I think the other thing that's going to come into play is more and more statistics and analyzing of exactly what's going on and having accurate information. So players will be able to know exactly how fast their forehand, how fast their backhand is, so they can really measure everything and the improvement in everything that they do. Which, again, once people have figures in their head, it's a lot easier to beat than just have a feeling, my serve's better. No, on average, your serve is now 5 miles an hour faster. That's a fact, and I think that's where the technology is going to get better and better in giving players and coaches very, very accurate information, and then they'll be able to measure their improvement in a lot of areas a lot more. So I do think that we're only at the starting point of what technology is going to do in terms of stats and logistics and everything of tennis matches.
It's interesting as well, looking at it from my perspective, playing futures. It feels like the depth is just getting like more and more. Like it felt like 10 years ago when I first started playing futures that there wasn't a huge depth to it in a certain sense. And I
agree with that, but I think also with the depth has come an increase in the level. So I'd say that tennis has gone, like this. The difference between the number 300 in the world and the number 50 in the world now is far less than it used to be. And the difference between 1,000 in the world and 500 is very, very small now. And I think increasingly it becomes down to, as players go up the levels, what's the difference between challenger and tour? Pretty much, I'm talking 250 level tour, pretty much nothing. Apart from a slightly better level of consistency. In other words, players able to put better tennis on the court a little bit more consistently, which takes them from 120 to 60 in the world. It's not that they're actually better players. They're better because of the consistency that they can bring to the level, for more weeks. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, being more all court is going to be there. Hope that answers your question.
Perfectly. Yeah, really interesting to hear your answers to those and your side of it. I feel like I've almost seen it from a new perspective. And that's actually helped my tennis going forward as well now. So
great.
So thank you again for having me on. Really appreciate it.
A pleasure.
Thank you very much.